What you are about to witness is the digitally recovered body-worn camera footage of Officer Thomas Vance. On the night of October 14th, 2018, Officer Vance was dispatched to a remote stretch of county road to investigate a report of a suspicious vehicle parked near an abandoned farmhouse. Officer Vance was a 12-year veteran of the force, thorough, highly trained, and not prone to panic. He arrived on scene alone, standard practice in a county where the next closest deputy might be 45 minutes away. According to GPS logs, he arrived at the property at 11:14 p.m. At 11:18 p.m., he activated his body camera and stepped out of his vehicle. By 11:26 p.m., Officer Thomas Vance had ceased to exist. What makes this case infamous is not the disappearance itself, but the fact that his body camera did not stop recording when he vanished. It lay in the dark, capturing the absolute silence of the house, until its battery died 4 hours later. The initial segment of this footage shows a standard property clearing, but pay close attention to the audio. Pay attention to the dust in the air, because long before Officer Vance realizes he is in danger, the environment around him is already changing.
Hello? Anybody home? Police! Anyone here? Make yourself known.
To a civilian, this footage is deeply unsettling. But to law enforcement, this is a standard building clearing. Officer Vance's posture, visible in the steady sweep of his flashlight and the controlled pacing of his steps, shows a man entirely in his element. But audio forensics teams found the first anomaly just as Vance steps onto the porch. If you isolate the audio track and strip away the crunch of his boots, the background ambience of the Michigan woods completely ceases. The moment his boot hits the first step of that porch, the ambient noise drops to a digital zero, an acoustic vacuum, as if the house swallowed the sound of the outside world entirely. Vance, focused on his visual sweep, does not appear to notice. He continues into the structure, treating it as routine. But the house has already isolated him. Radio dead zones are common in the rural Upper Peninsula. Vance likely assumed he had walked into a signal shadow. However, dispatch logs showed that his transmission was received perfectly on their end. Dispatch responded 3 times. None of those responses reached his radio. In 2019, an independent audio engineer ran the static through a spectral analyzer. The waveform matched the acoustic signature of human respiration, specifically a human lung exhaling underwater. Unaware of the nature of the interference, Vance proceeds to the second floor to finish clearing the structure. County property records from 1962 reveal a terrifying detail. The house does not have an attic. The ceiling Vance is looking at is the roof line. There is a mere 6 inches of clearance between the plaster ceiling and the shingled roof outside. It is physically impossible for a human being or any large animal to be walking in that space. The footage shows Officer Vance reacting to a physical impossibility. His training dictates he investigate the source. His instincts are visibly fighting him. The camera captures rapid, shallow breathing. The slight tremor in the beam of his flashlight indicates an adrenaline dump. He is experiencing a primal fear response. He is seeing something, although nothing appears on camera. This is the precise moment Officer Thomas Vance vanishes. The timeline is exact: 11:26 p.m. and 14 seconds. The strangest thing in this recording is the sudden drop of Thomas, a drop that happened without any warning. No attack, no struggle, no clear medical condition. But even stranger is the voice you hear.
They're behind you, Tom! They're behind you, Tom!
Internal investigation determined that voice did not come from the police. Not the dispatcher, not another police officer. No one knows who and why warned him. Forensic analysis found no signs of a struggle, no blood. His service weapon was found resting neatly on the floor, perfectly aligned with his dropped flashlight. The body camera's mounting clip was completely intact, not broken, not torn away. For the camera to fall as shown, it would have had to be carefully unclipped, or the uniform it was attached to would have had to simply cease to exist. But the Axon body camera is designed to record until its battery is depleted, or it is manually shut off. It was not manually shut off. Footage starts again, not from same spot, but still inside the house. For the next 4 hours, the camera lay sideways on the floor of that master bedroom, staring out into the empty hallway. Because the camera did not capture nothing, it captured what happens in that house when no one is looking. Psychologists who reviewed the full, unedited 4-hour tape described this section as an endurance test in psychological terror. Digital effects experts confirmed the footage was not looped. Timecode analysis and the continuous swirling of dust particles in the foreground proved the footage was playing in real time. Officer Thomas Vance was officially declared missing in the line of duty. A massive search involving K-9 units, state police helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers scoured the farmhouse and 10 surrounding square miles of forest. They found nothing. Not a shred of his uniform. Not a footprint leading away from the house. But what they did find keeps the investigating detectives awake at night. The body camera was not lying on its side on the master bedroom floor. It was found downstairs, in the kitchen, sitting perfectly upright, perfectly centered on the ruined kitchen island facing the front door. It had been placed there deliberately. The service weapon and the flashlight were never recovered. The official report states that Officer Vance suffered a psychological break, discarded his equipment, and wandered into the Michigan wilderness. The footage has been classified as corrupted data caused by a damaged logic board. But those who have seen the tape know the truth. The camera was not corrupted. It functioned perfectly. It simply recorded a reality that no one is prepared to accept. The farmhouse was bulldozed by the county in 2020. The land remains vacant, swallowed by tall weeds and the silent Michigan woods. But locals still refuse to drive that stretch of county road at night, because they know what the footage proved. Just because a house is empty doesn't mean it is uninhabited. And if you ever find yourself walking up to a dark, ruined doorway and the crickets suddenly go silent, do not cross the threshold. If you have a theory about what happened to Officer Thomas Vance, leave it in the comments. Was this a psychological collapse, a structural anomaly, or something that learned how to wait? But before you answer that, you need to understand something about this place, because that farmhouse did not exist in isolation. It sat on a stretch of land that has been quietly collecting people for over a century. The property is located in a region of Michigan's Upper Peninsula that locals refer to without any affection, as the Saw Corridor. It is a rough band of territory that runs approximately 60 miles southwest from Sault Ste. Marie, cutting through Chippewa and Mackinac counties before dissolving into the deep interior forests near the Hiawatha National Forest boundary. It is not on any tourist map. It is not referenced in any travel guide. It is, by almost every measurable standard, empty. But emptiness in the Upper Peninsula does not mean absence. It means something else entirely. The Saw Corridor is defined by three features: dense, mixed forests of sugar maple, yellow birch, and eastern hemlock that grow so thick in places that the canopy blocks out sunlight even at midday. A network of logging roads, most of them unmaintained since the 1960s, that wind through the forest in patterns that do not always correspond to any existing map, and a silence, a deep physical silence that visitors describe not as the absence of sound, but as the presence of something absorbing it. The farmhouse where Officer Vance disappeared was one of 11 abandoned structures scattered along a 20-mile section of county road that cuts through the heart of this corridor. Most of them date to the 1890s, when a short-lived copper speculation brought families into the region. The copper never materialized. The families stayed anyway, farming thin soil in short growing seasons, surviving winters that regularly dropped to 30 below. By the 1930s, most of the homesteads had been abandoned. The forest reclaimed them slowly, the way forests do in northern Michigan, with patience and without mercy. But the people who left those houses did not all leave voluntarily, and many of them did not leave at all. Between 1927 and 1953, Chippewa County recorded 14 missing persons cases along that stretch of road. 14 people across 26 years in a region with a population that never exceeded 400. The cases shared almost nothing in common. The missing included a 12-year-old boy who wandered away from his family's woodlot in November of 1927, a postal carrier who failed to complete his route in March of 1934, a pair of CCC workers who did not return from a timber survey in the summer of 1941, a woman named Edith Granger who walked to her neighbor's farm to borrow flour in October of 1953 and was never seen again. Her footprints were found in the road. They stopped in the middle of the gravel, as if she had simply ceased to walk. None of the 14 were ever found. No bodies, no clothing, no personal effects. The investigations, such as they were, produced nothing. In each case, the filer was eventually closed with the same notation: lost in the woods. But the Ojibwe communities in the region had a different explanation. They called this stretch of land Ga-Week-Wedong, which translates roughly as the place that pulls inward. Elders described it as a wound in the landscape, a location where the boundary between the surface world and what lies beneath it had grown dangerously thin. They did not go there. They did not hunt there. They did not gather medicines or set traps along that corridor. When the logging roads were cut through in the 1920s, Ojibwe leaders formally requested that the routes be redirected. The requests were ignored. The warnings went deeper than superstition. According to oral histories recorded by the University of Michigan's Anthropology Department in 1968, the Ojibwe had documented specific behaviors associated with the corridor. Animals that wandered into the area behaved erratically. Dogs refused to cross certain thresholds. Migratory birds altered their flight paths to avoid the canopy above the densest sections. And people who spent extended time in the corridor reported a phenomenon that the elders described as time folding. Minutes that felt like hours. Hours that passed in what seemed like seconds. A disorientation so profound that experienced woodsmen who had lived in the region their entire lives could become lost within a quarter-mile of a road they had walked 1,000 times. In 1971, a Michigan State Police trooper named Gerald Hute was dispatched to investigate a reported vehicle fire on the same county road where, 47 years later, Officer Vance would receive his final call. Trooper Hute arrived on scene at approximately 9:30 in the evening. His radio contact with dispatch was normal. He reported no vehicle fire, just an empty stretch of road and the smell of something burning. He said he was going to check the tree line. That was his last transmission. His patrol car was found the following morning, parked on the shoulder with the engine off and the driver's door open. His hat was on the passenger seat. His service weapon was in its holster, hanging from the rearview mirror. Gerald Hewitt was never found. The case attracted brief statewide attention. A search involving over 200 volunteers covered 8 square miles of forest around the location. They found nothing. The official finding was that Trooper Hewitt had experienced a medical event and wandered into the woods in a disoriented state. His family rejected this explanation. Gerald Hewitt was 44 years old, in excellent physical condition, and had no history of medical problems. He had served in Korea. He had spent his entire career patrolling the Upper Peninsula. He knew those woods the way Officer Vance knew his patrol routes. The forest was not something that could disorient him. It was his home. But something in that corridor had taken him anyway. In 1989, a group of graduate students from Michigan Technological University conducted an environmental survey of the Hiawatha National Forest boundary. Their study area overlapped with the southern end of the SAR corridor. The project was straightforward: soil sampling, canopy density measurements, wildlife activity monitoring. They set up motion-activated cameras at 12 sites and left them running for 60 days. 11 of the cameras functioned normally, capturing the expected parade of white-tailed deer, black bears, porcupines, and the occasional coyote. The 12th camera, positioned near one of the abandoned homesteads, produced results that the research team could not explain. For the first 23 days, the camera captured nothing. Not a single frame was triggered. No animals, no wind-blown branches, nothing. Then, on day 24, the camera began triggering continuously. Every 4 minutes, around the clock, for 37 consecutive days, the camera fired. When the team retrieved the film, every single frame showed the same thing: an empty clearing. No animal, no movement, no visible trigger. The camera had been activated by something the lens could not capture. The team's faculty advisor dismissed the results as a malfunction. The camera was discarded. The data was excluded from the final paper. But one of the graduate students, a woman named Karen Del Vecchio, kept copies of the photographs. She later told a journalist from the Marquette Mining Journal that if you arranged the photographs in sequence and looked at the shadows on the ground, the shadow positions did not match the timestamps. In some frames taken at noon, the shadows fell as if it were late afternoon. In frames taken at midnight, the clearing appeared to be lit by a light source that did not correspond to the moon's position. She said the photographs showed a place where time was not functioning correctly. The article was published in October of 1991. It generated no follow-up. Karen Del Vecchio left academia the following year and never spoke publicly about the photographs again. And then there is the acoustic data. In 2003, the United States Geological Survey installed a network of low-frequency seismographic monitors across the Upper Peninsula as part of a broader study of tectonic microactivity in the Great Lakes region. One of those monitors was placed within the SAW corridor, approximately 4 miles from the farmhouse where Officer Vance would later disappear. The monitor recorded what seismologists expected: the faint background hum of tectonic settling. the vibrations of distant highway traffic, the occasional signature of a minor tremor deep in the bedrock. But it also recorded something else. At irregular intervals, typically between 2 and 4 in the morning, the monitor picked up a low-frequency pulse that did not match any known geological or mechanical source. The pulse was rhythmic, cycling at approximately 0.7 Hz, just below the threshold of human hearing. It lasted between 4 and 11 minutes before stopping abruptly. The waveform was consistent across every recorded instance. It did not degrade. It did not vary. It repeated with the precision of a heartbeat. The USGS team flagged the anomaly in their internal report but could not identify a source. The monitor was repositioned twice. The pulse appeared regardless of location, as long as the sensor remained within the corridor. When the monitor was moved outside the corridor boundary, the pulse disappeared. The final report classified it as an unresolved ambient signature and recommended further study. No further study was conducted. This is the environment Officer Thomas Vance walked into on the night of October 14, 2018. A landscape with a documented history of swallowing people whole. A corridor where time behaves incorrectly, where sound ceases to function, where instruments record presences that cameras cannot see. A place the Ojibwe marked as dangerous centuries before any Europeans set foot in Michigan. The farmhouse was not the anomaly. The farmhouse was just a door, and whatever lives in the Saal corridor has been opening doors for a very long time. Officer Vance was the most recent. He will almost certainly not be the last, because the corridor is still there. The county road still runs through it, and every night when the darkness settles over the Upper Peninsula and the temperature drops and the forest goes quiet, something beneath that canopy is listening, waiting for the next set of headlights to slow down, the next car to pull over, the next person to step out into the dark and walk toward a threshold they should never have crossed. If you live in the Upper Peninsula, you already know which roads to avoid after dark. If you do not live there, consider this your warning. The Saal corridor is real. The silence is real. And whatever took Officer Thomas Vance is patient enough to wait for the next one. It always has been. Subscribe for more and stay on the road.